Steady Healing, Episode 3, Healing Through Craniosacral Therapy with Nancy Wolf.
Nancy, I can't remember when I met you. I feel like I've always known you. It's really interesting. I've been to many sessions with you. You've taught at Zion Massage College. You've changed my life in so many ways with the healing work that you do. And but I don't know when we met. Do you know?
I remember, yeah, a little bit. I remember coming over to your massage college around, did you have it in 2011 or 12?
Yeah, like 2010.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Because I moved back from California.
Okay.
And I came, somebody said, go
so you
talk
were
to
new
Rebecca.
here too in
Well, I was only
Central-
gone 2 years.
Okay.
And then, yeah.
Okay, then you came back.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so somebody had mentioned that you had the massage college and go meet you. And I remember looking you up and you were busy and I saw you and met you for 2 seconds and then another year goes by,
Right.
you know.
Right.
But anyway, that's
It's interesting how time does that.
Yeah, but it would have been about 2011 or 12. Isn't
Yeah,
that
well,
amazing?
I'm glad I started to come to see you for craniosacral therapy because I really feel like you're a master at what you do. And I feel like you've changed my life and you've changed so many lives of people that I know personally. So craniosacral therapy is an interesting thing because I've watched people go through craniosacral therapy before and they seem to start just becoming their true self. I mean, would you agree that happens?
That's a good way of putting it.
And I've watched people do things like, sometimes they do things that others in their life want them to do. And sometimes they do things that other people in their life think they shouldn't do, like get out of a marriage or change careers or do things that other people were hoping that the trajectory would be different, but they do what seems to really be in their heart. Like their dharma comes out and they're free to follow it. So what have you experienced with craniosacral in your clients? Do you see a lot of that with people? Those types of radical shifts?
It depends, especially if they are doing more than one session. One session,
Right.
Sometimes you have these off-the-chart changes that are amazing. Sometimes it's like you've got so much going on in your body and we get in and it's almost like your inner wisdom goes, oh good, we have helped you dump this stuff. And sometimes that first session can just be so profound.
Right.
And then I have a lot of clients who come once a month or whatever, or maybe it's every 6 months, but they come and then they have some shifts and they start looking at life differently. And the way you're explaining it's beautiful because it's like, people will call craniosacral therapy energy work, and I go, no, we're working the fascia. The rhythm is proven. It's very physical. I mean, it is there physically proven. But however, where you have tightness in your tissues, where that cranial rhythm doesn't flow through tissues easy, I call it seaweed in your ocean, and there's energy trapped there. Whether it's because you had trauma and the tissues are sticky and scarry and whatnot, or because you had something happen emotionally and that tissue tightens and those emotions are held there.
Right.
So I think my favorite thing about craniosacral therapy is because as we work physically to come in and find where do you hold your stress, where do you hold your trauma, what's going on, and as we help that gently release, then the energy changes. Well, then that frees up. I call it the ball and chain. Mm-hmm. It's like the stuff that's been holding you back. If your thoughts and your emotions are held in your tissues, as we help that old stuff release, you can move forward into the real you and move forward into the changes you're working on. If you're working on breaking a habit or being more conscientious about this or whatever, but you've got this old stuff in your body literally holding you back. That's the thing that I love about craniosacral is cleaning that out so you can move forward. And so yes, we do see we see changes. You see people working through abuse issues that were holding them back and causing, what do you call it? The word misbehavior popped in my mind, but dysfunctional behavior.
Yeah. I mean, to other people sometimes it feels like misbehavior. Like,
it's like
and hurt people hurt
people.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's what, it's pretty amazing stuff.
I love it. How do you explain craniosacral therapy and what you're about to experience in a session? How do you explain that to a new client or to someone who's just curious?
I keep joking. I need to put it on an iPad and they can watch it out in the waiting room. You know,
Right.
to
Like,
save,
what is craniosacral
save 5
therapy?
minutes. Yeah, it's like, so the first thing is understanding that there's a cranial rhythm. So the craniosacral system around the whole brain and spinal cord, they found in the 1800s, they started monitoring and charting this rhythm. And what happens is the skull bones actually expand and contract a little, just very minute amount. It's been proven and measured. It's measurable. But
You're people like, I mean, so everything's controversial, first of all, and you really are able to find data for that being something that is true, and then you're going to have people that will say that is not true.
There's
That's
no
not
way.
true.
I know.
And that's okay.
I know. I know. And so what they found though was as this rhythm is happening in your sacrum and your low back is rocking, I tell people you're mostly water. If I move something in water here, guess what happens? It moves throughout. So you can actually feel this rhythm throughout the body. And then I call it seaweed in your ocean, where you've got problems as that wave comes through. It's like having a rock in a pond or reeds growing in a pond. The wave feels different where you have problem areas, and we use that to find where to go, what's going on in your body. So I explain to people that we've got this rhythm. We're using the rhythm to find where it doesn't flow normal and very gently working it. And it's gentle work. I'm a licensed massage therapist, and it's usually massage therapists and physical therapists that get drawn into this, looking for something to get more down to the cause. I love massage. It's valuable. I had a Thai massage this morning, and oh my gosh, I keep having to go to the bathroom because I'm just the fluids are moving, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. And so I'm like, I will never discount massage. But when it comes to things like migraines and TMJ and chronic neck and back problems and like, I mean, craniosacral is so gentle. We can work on newborns that and help them if they're not nursing properly, or they've got torticollis, or you've got all these different things going on. So it's more about getting down to the cause of a chronic problem.
Talk about the connection between emotional type things with a person and the physical things that they experience. I personally, in craniosacral therapy, experienced profound connection between my physical and my emotional bodies. And in Chinese medicine, a lot of Eastern medicine, pain is pain. So whether you experience it emotionally, spiritually, whether you experience it physically, these are all still pain linked together. So release of one would release the other. With your journey, because you spent some time receiving craniosacral therapy too.
A lot.
Yeah. Did you notice that connection and that releasing the emotional release the physical, and conversely releasing the physical release the emotional?
It's amazing. I was fortunate to have a girl who had similar levels of training, so we were on our learning journey. We traded every month for almost 11 years.
Oh, wow.
And then she moved away. It was like, where'd my buddy go? So during that time, we both were working through childhood wounds and different things. And I mean, you can find the books and the charts that talk about, the symptoms in your body and the different emotions that are linked to it.
Right.
The thing that's so cool with craniosacral therapy that I absolutely love is coming in, and instead of looking up in a book, we come in and talk with your inner wisdom. That wave-like cranial rhythm, what's fascinating is it will turn off when you're thinking or talking about something significant. We call it the significance detector. And so as somebody has a chronic stomach ache, we can go in and ask that inner wisdom, okay, show it to us. What does it look like? Give us the metaphors. Why is it there? And what does it need? And it's amazing, those inner wisdom answers that will come up. Right. You can come, my personal stuff, I didn't know I had sexual abuse until I was 40, going to massage school. And it happened when I was about 3.5, 4, 5, right in that age bracket, more than once. And I had no recollection. And I go to massage school at age 40, and I start getting flashbacks. And so through touch, safe, nurturing touch, non-sexual, I also was a phase in my life where I was ready and learning tools, being handed all the mind-body connection things through massage school, and then I get out of massage school and my angels would go, you need to learn craniosacral. I go, well, what about, I'm really good at reflexology. Nope, For me, my journey was learn one thing well. Most people, that's not their journey. And, there were so many times I well, don't I need to do this and this and this? But I think my guides knew me really well. I'm the kind that would dig 100 holes 1 foot deep. Rather than, and it was like, no, dig 1 hole 100 feet. It was, and it was like, so learn that well.
Much depth to it.
And so the beauty of it was the healing inside of me, and being able to learn how to say no, and learn how to stick up for myself, and learn how to, so many things. And the awareness and that mind-body connection. It's really fun. I'm in a new marriage. It'll be 4-year anniversary in
I can't believe it.
in 2 weeks.
I can't believe it.
You gotta be kidding. So anyway, he just told me the other day, he goes, one of my favorite things about you, Nancy, is you work so hard at, what word did he use? But like self-evaluating. I'm constantly.
You are. And I love that about you.
If I say or do something that's off, I'll catch it. And of course I'm not perfect.
So I feel like I can actually talk to you about this, because this is a very controversial thing in our society. And so you mentioned that you had some sexual abuse stuff come up when you went to those sessions. And I think it's great to address those things. Sometimes we do deal with people that have false memories, or the brain can be very malleable. We have very imaginative brains. I had a student one time that, after watching just a video that I showed them, the person in the video had some swearing in his video, and the swearing was really a trigger for her. And so that night she had a dream that her daughter was being molested by that person, like in the video. And it didn't happen. It wasn't.
But our brains.
But she woke up and she was kind of mad at me. And had to walk her through it. We had to talk about it and everything, because it felt so real to her. And so when you're working with clients, we do, and then, I've worked with clients before that have certain disorders, maybe bipolar disorder, borderline personality type things. And we know that sometimes accusations are made up, and sometimes they're really believed by the person. And then most of the time they're true when there's, said. But we'd be remiss to not at least address that possibility, because in your case, you're remembering things from being a little child, but false memories could traumatize that person if they were false, right? So they could traumatize that person. And they also, if there was an accusation that was false, it would be, the victim would be the person that was being accused, And so have you come across that? Were you ever suspected with a client that a memory might be just imagination? Have you had to deal with that at all?
Actually, no. It's interesting. Because usually what happens is we're not really working on that aspect. That's stuff you would do with a counselor.
Yeah. What
happens is that it creates like a, I call it sticky in the tissues type thing. It's like there's seaweed. So it creates energetic blocks in their body. So it's really common, just like the textbooks say about the mind-body connection, that like female problems and things might come across because they have problems with that. But so I think I work more on the aspect of releasing it from their tissues.
Is it possible, though, for a person to have a, even make up a scenario? We know,
Our
People really
brains
can
are,
like make up a scenario.
Yeah.
Our brains are amazing and so
Our brains are
so
very
we make it
creative.
up, we believe it. I mean, we do this all the time on minor levels with each other, in like the mind reading we do with each other, and all the things that we think are happening, our perception that can be just a little bit off of what's going on, you know?
Right,
And
right.
and then we believe it really happened, even in like a humorous way. So the other day, my students and I were driving up to the school's property in Kolob, and we stopped at the gas station to get gas for the van before we like headed up the final stretch. And there was a man that was sitting with a jug of just water, like a gallon jug of water, and he was pouring it into the ground. And it was at the gas station, and the students were like, what is he doing? And I said jokingly, I said, well, it's a Buddhist practice of showing respect to your ancestors. And they also have a Native American tradition. Well, they do, you know what I mean? Where you actually take water and pour it, but I knew that man was not doing that, you know? But the
wanted to
joke
tease
was
them.
actually about, and they knew I was joking, and I always, you know, say it when I am. But the joke was about like this commentary of how you could just like go through the world and see these things and just be like, and that's what I saw, and that's what I saw, and that's what I saw. You know? And so do you think it's possible for somebody to actually use something that is a figment of their imagination, they bring it up, they associate it with what's going on in their body, it becomes a symbol, and they're still able to heal? You know? They're able to take that.
Whether it's true or false.
Whether it's true or false almost doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like it's still like your symbol for healing.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that I always love the saying, it's the meaning you attach to things. So do you want to stay playing victim?
Right.
Do you want to, I think that's the part I like to help people with, is getting them out of the fear emotions into the love emotions, getting into, because fear tightens tissues. That's what creates the sticky. So it's like, okay, if you can work through that, weed through it, and shift, how would you rather feel?
Right.
And then let's move into that emotion.
Right.
Then usually people walk out the door feeling a lot better and have it. And my thing is I love teaching tools to help. Like, okay, so if this, whether it's true or not, isn't the issue. It's like, what meaning are you putting on it?
Right.
You know, are you staying in anger and hate and blame and victim, or are you going to move out of it? And
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a real test in, was that therapy helpful? And did you hold on to it, or did you move out of it?
Yeah.
Did you come away with more trauma and a deeper story, or did you actually come away with freedom and lightness and with a more compassionate viewpoint, you know?
Well, and I rarely tell people about the sexual abuse stuff that I had, because now here I am after 23 years ago starting the flashbacks. The whole journey has been this fascinating journey of actually learning and embracing, and I recognize it in clients. And so I'm able to help them through that process to release it and let it go and be forgiving, and to not hold on to it. It's just going to hold you back.
Right.
It's like, who do you want to be? Do you want to sit around being the victim and cry all the time that this is what happened to me? Yeah, it's terrible what happened to you, but grow from it. That's where I'm like, you can be empowered no matter what happened, whether it's a car accident or it's the horrible thing you had with a parent, or, I mean, all the things in life. The list goes on and on.
Right.
You know, but what are you going to do with it?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
So.
Love that. So, with your healing journey with craniosacral therapy, at what point did you decide that this was the work that you would do almost exclusively? And now it's exclusively, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
When did that shift for you?
Oh, early on. I graduated from massage school in 1998. It was the first massage school in Little St. George, Utah.
Wow.
And so, and immediately started taking the Upledger courses. Dr. Upledger's the osteopath who saw the rhythm, ran for 40 years researching and all of that, and I highly recommend their courses. So they do a 4-day seminar, and then they send you home and say, go practice on 100 people. And so I did, and so about 6 months later, okay, I'm ready for the next level. And so by that third level, you're starting to, after 6 months and another 6 months, it had been about 1.5 years that I was doing massage and weaving in the craniosacral. And for some reason on my journey, I wasn't real good at blending the two. I wasn't, a massage was more physical, and cranial, I feel like I'm swimming in your ocean.
Yeah.
So so many people can blend the two, and it was like, so somebody would come to me for a massage, they'd have textbook migraines or whatever. They'd have, this chronic problem, and I'd go, next time you come, how about if we do craniosacral? Or I would do half craniosacral, half, but it was really funny. Yeah. So after a year and a half, I woke up this one morning, I was booked 4 weeks out solid, doing massage and a little cranial. And I woke up this one morning, Monday morning, and in the shower, I was like, not looking forward to the week. And that was my red flag. Something's wrong. Mm-hmm. By that afternoon, I knew I needed to quit doing massage.
And craniosacral.
And so I just told clients, here's the names of some of my favorite therapists in the area, and I'm only going to do craniosacral. And so that would have...
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really listening to your inner wisdom and following the path.
So it was at the end of 1999, I remember, yeah.
Were you immediately booked up with people after that, or did you just...
It's always been a fascinating flow with the universe. I'll be booked for a couple weeks out, and then it'll slow down and something crazy happens in my personal world, and I need it lighter for a little while, and then it'll come back. I mean, it's just been the most amazing flow for me of just trust. And, I don't enjoy being booked more than 2 or 3 weeks out, because I kind of feel like I don't have a lot of...
You need a little break. You need some,
I like to have a little wiggle room to be able to put somebody in who's urgent, or, I get a call for that nursing baby that is 4 days old and can't latch on, or, I like to have that. So I tend to not, the universe listens to me, and 2 or 3 weeks out is about my max that I like to be booked. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Because it's like, I don't, I that's a good rhythm for me. Yeah. So, and that may change down the road. I mean, so I've had a lady in town I've had people that usually go to her come to me, and they said she's booked for a whole year out. And I'm like, I couldn't do that.
Just to see that, that trajectory and be like,
I couldn't do that. Year. Yeah. And I'm like, no, how do you plan a vacation that far ahead,
No room for any spontaneity. And
I'm way too spontaneous. Good point. You know me. It's like,
So what types of conditions have you worked with? What types of symptoms and things have people come to you with wanting relief from craniosacral?
Oh, there's so many. I've mentioned migraines a few times. That's probably what it's most famous for, chronic headaches and migraines, but that's probably only 20% of my clients. You know what I mean? It's like, that's not that huge. A lot of people will come because they hear it's really good for a tune-up. Just get in here and get tuned up. I get people that have been in a car accident, and because of the energetic component of it, it's amazing to help release that, or a bad fall, or that kind of stuff. I get quite a few of those.
Have you worked very much with TBIs, with traumatic brain injuries?
I actually have had a handful. It kind of goes in waves, like everything in life.
I've sent people to you with a variety of things.
I know you do.
Like diagnosed mental illness, just for those tune-ups. And of course, when we have something like that, we also, they'll typically be seeing a counselor, and they'll have someone that's regulating their medications and things like that.
Right.
But in addition to that, as complementary therapy, it seems to get really good results.
TBIs, just even a simple concussion, and sometimes concussions aren't that simple. I mean, people have a mild concussion and they're still struggling with their memory. They're still struggling with stuff. And it's amazing. And then they hear about craniosacral and they come, and within one to 3, 4 visits, I tell people, if you aren't seeing any progress in 3 visits or so, 3 or 4 visits, and then we're barking up the wrong tree.
Right, but they typically do.
Oh, yeah.
And I noticed a big shift in my brain. I think I did not realize I was having migraine headaches. And so I would interpret it as just being spacey, but it wasn't an inability to think. It was like a cloud, so I get like the blurred vision and all those different things.
Ocular.
And I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm so spacey. I'm going to need to like really focus more. And so I'd focus more through it. And, but it was a lot of work, and I almost like looked at it as something where I was interpreting it as, I'm not intelligent, but I can like gather it all together and then engage and be intelligent, even though I'm not. You know what I mean? Like a thing like that. And just a visual, right? And so craniosacral therapy, probably because it just relieved that migraine headache, you know what I mean? I would come out of it and I would feel clear, free. My brain, it was easy to think, you know? And
I've never heard you say that. That's
such an amazing experience.
Yeah. That's interesting, because there's different levels of migraines, or cluster headaches or chronic headaches.
But I made up a big story about it's. You know, I didn't even like consider it being a migraine. I had a whole story about what it was. You know?
That's interesting.
Interesting. Yeah.
So and the thing that is interesting about things like migraines, probably another passion I have with craniosacral is because fascia connective tissue runs everywhere. I tell people, think of it as cotton candy. I mean, it's throughout your whole body.
Oh, it is. It is. When you study
everywhere.
it, I mean, it really, you see how like bound we could be by it, right?
Well,
and if we have a little something going on here, it can pull
all the way up here.
It can affect your eye. And we tend to think of things in terms of, in our society, just that muscular system, not realizing this whole like wrapping around it, you know?
And that's where I love to explain that with clients. I'm like, you don't have to hold still when you're on the table, because this is like a sweater and you have a snag here. You get three-dimensional pulled threads. So one of my favorite stories that I often tell is a woman came to me, this was 18, 20 years ago. She came to me for migraine headaches, and with that cranial rhythm, you feel the rhythm in the body, and she had none in her right foot, right leg sluggish. And I go, tell me about this foot and leg. And she's like, I had surgery on it when I was 17 and a half. And so I assess, where do I go? And it's like, you're going to that foot and leg. What the heck is wrong with this? You know? So I'm gently working. She's talking away. We're chit-chatting and I'm working. And I get a light bulb about 20 minutes later. I'm like, so how old were you when you started getting migraines? Oh, let me think. I was about 18.
Long enough for that to sink into her body.
Who would ever think migraine headaches came from a foot surgery?
Right.
Okay. I mean, no one. I wouldn't even think that.
Right.
But I sat there working. We did 3 or 4 sessions. I spent 80% of the session on that foot and leg, working the seaweed, unraveling, and energy's flowing.
All with your body.
And then she's like, there's no more migraines.
Yeah.
And you're just like, and that's why I'm like, that's one of my favorite stories.
I love that story. Yeah, I love it. Because I've seen it too.
Yeah. And it's like, and when people are on the table, I like to warn them. If I remember, I warn them. Odd sensations are common in this work, because we're finding that fascial pull. My hands might be one place and you feel this little go through the body.
Right.
And it's that it can feel electrical, but it's like, or that whole leg twitches as we're over here or something. It's incredible. And then they walk out going, the whole spine is good for scoliosis. It's amazing for scoliosis, getting the tissues to let go of that stress and go in and talk to the inner wisdom in the body as to, well, what's going on and what do you need? And,
Yeah, for sure. So I've seen unwinding happen, and it can look like, in cranial, I've usually experienced as just like sort of subtle movements, and I almost don't even know, where the client doesn't know that they're moving their body, the therapist is doing
That's
it.
probably most common.
Right? Yeah.
But then there's huge moving.
There's huge moving. And the other place they have huge movements like that, where you see it, is in myofascial release. And do you ever get those huge movements with people on the table?
I had a girl that was in a Suburban, huge vehicle. It rolled 4 times.
Oh, wow.
Which you can imagine how much impact that would take.
Right.
So she was coming to me. I have a 4-inch foam on top of the massage table. I would move the massage table over and put it down on the floor so she wasn't afraid of falling off.
Right.
Because her body had to go.
Right.
And Dr. Upledger, when he did his research, one of the theories he came up with is, it's almost like the body needs to be back in the original position of trauma. Well, when you're in a rollover, what position of trauma were you in?
Right.
There's thousands of milliseconds.
So many positions.
The milliseconds of energy.
So she was moving into all those. And
So it was amazing to help her move through that. And and that cranial rhythm, as a therapist, you're taught how to feel, like they'll move, and it's like this quiet that lets you know, oh, stay right there, that's significant. And then sometimes you'll feel this energy come blasting out of the body, and then, okay, rhythm's back on, time to move, and they'll move, and sometimes it's profound. The other thing that's really fun is I've got a couple of good therapists in town now that we do dual sessions with. And so you get 2 or 3 therapists at the same time.
Wow.
And the body, it's like it goes, oh, I've got all these hands on me. I'm going to unwind.
I love that. I love that. I work with this little girl, and it's basically doing Thai massage, but it's doing every single modality that I know and whatever she needs. You know what I mean? And so I'm working with her. She has cerebral palsy, and she's little, it's so cute. And we've seen big improvements with her, but I'll usually get 2 to 3 therapists. So I'll work on her and then have like a couple of students come in. And it really is just responding to anything going on with her body, and having several people doing it. Because with cerebral palsy, you have, well, we all do, right? You have something that releases here, but then this responds and tightens up. And you sometimes will be chasing that pain through the body with whatever modality you're using, whatever style of massage or energy work, you sometimes end up chasing that through the body. So it does give you an opportunity to get to like all these things at once, and the body just sort of goes, like out of control, and then completely goes back to like zero bouncing, you know what I mean? So that you're right at where you should be, that state of health, you return to like your original healthy state. And I love that you're doing that.
Oh, it's incredible. And I tell people, having 4 hands instead of 2 hands, it's not double, it's exponential.
Yeah.
And we can't even count. It never ceases to amaze me that each therapist will be feeling the rhythm and guided into different places, and one's down at the feet and one's up here, and you're on opposite ends of that pulled thread. It's just like, and the body, the body knows.
You're energetically like
it's just
it's amazing.
It is.
Yeah,
and so we when you get 4 or 6 hands on you, you will see a lot more unwinding going on.
That's cool.
So
the first time I saw major unwinding was with John Barnes with myofascial release. And I took Christina, the program director at the school, to one of his seminars. We flew to New York. We're sitting there.
And wasn't it the first level?
It was the first level, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it was pretty recent. This is like 4 years ago or something.
I remember
4 or 5 years ago.
what you guys meant. Yeah.
And so, and I had I have extensive experience in body work and all these Eastern styles, but I guess I wasn't allowing for this unwinding that can happen. And my psychology wasn't even open to it. So when I saw it the first time, John Barnes has this interesting presence. And by that, I mean, I interpret it as a little bit of arrogance, And I questioned my thoughts. So I noticed it, and I was like, hey, judgment, And so I just watched anyway, but he had one of his assistants got on the table, and she immediately started unwinding. He put his hands on her. She started unwinding, and it looked like a theatrical exorcism from a movie.
I knew you were going to say or whatever you call it.
Because you're very intuitive. Okay.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
So she's unwinding, and she's doing all these things that don't exactly look graceful. And he says very theatrically, behold, behold the true yoga, And I got like the church giggles, and so did Christina, from it. But he was right. And I actually think that when you experience that, and also when you start seeing it with your clients and the benefits they get, that it is the true, I get what he's saying, the true yoga. Like you really are moving in every direction you needed to move, and you're restoring full mobility to all the joints. You are getting rid of all these little issues with the fascia, so the body has freedom. Total freedom again. And that really is beautiful,
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I don't know how true it is, but it was somebody who knew John Barnes and stuff. So I tended to believe the story, but like I say, I have no idea the truth of it.
Yeah.
But it makes sense from my experiences. I was told John Barnes worked with Upledger. Yeah. And then they had a parting of ways, and one of the things was they didn't agree Upledger teaches things way more gentle, way more subtle, and John Barnes likes the more dramatic.
I think that's true.
And
that's
so when
been my
you tell me
experience,
that, it validates that.
So I think that
you know.
is absolutely true.
And then I was a teacher's aide for cranial. I've done cranial 1, cranial 2. I've done as a teacher's aide. The teachers will tell us this is the beginning levels. We don't want theatricals. So,
okay. They're like,
so,
we had this one guy one time.
Yeah,
it was very
it's like,
theatrical, and we in our company we said
exactly.
That's hilarious.
So they say we don't want to scare people off. We don't want the drama, and so our job as a teacher's aide is to stay grounded and to keep things more subdued and gentle.
I honestly like both now, but it took me a little time to be okay with both. You know, I was a little bit, the theatrics were a little bit much for me in the beginning. And
I would have a hard time with it because I'm so used to things being more soft and subtle.
And the emotional release, the initial, like you are thrown in, you know, it's like baptism by fire instead of water.
And then instead of it being a year and a half later, as you work your way up through the seminars, then they start.
They're both amazing. Though.
You know,
they really are both amazing modalities.
Oh, that's the thing. Is no criticism or judgment. It's just like
craniosacral therapy. I would always come out every session. I've come out feeling very, very clear. And with myofascial release, I've come out gaining clarity, but many times with an emotional release. In fact, I went in for a session with myofascial release with an excellent therapist and good friend of mine. And he did some work where he was just pressing on my chest and he was doing some unwinding on my chest. And it was my first myofascial release session. And I came out of the session and he said, "How did you like your massage? How do you feel?" And I thought to myself, "You are such a jerk. I don't have to tell you. I don't have to," this is just thinking in my head, like, I don't have to tell you how I feel, you know, like almost like that's too much to ask. And so I realized from my experience and stuff that that's not a rational thought. You know what I mean? That this is not proportional to what just happened. And this isn't, you know what I mean? So
the self-evaluation,
right.
Okay,
so I'm thinking that and feeling like almost justified. And so I was like, you know what? I think I'm having an emotional release. You know, those were the words that he's like, "What are you feeling?" I'm like, "I feel so mad at you," you know? And as I felt it like, you know, I mean, like I didn't feel it so much anymore.
But she
back to like you could do a little kid show on it, like mad. It's good to say you're mad. Okay. But, you know what I mean? Like it just dissipated at that moment. And he was like, yeah, that's probably an emotional release. I'm like, well, good job. This is good then, you know?
Oh, wow.
But there's oftentimes stronger feelings with that, you know?
That's so funny. That's funny. I love that.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you've heard it in your trainings and seminars too, and connection.
So it just kind of validates what I've heard. But
it's
absolutely. Like, no, with craniosacral, it's a
very
little
gentle, nurturing approach.
It's a little softer, not quite, not the theatrical stuff.
Yeah, my fascia's like, let's get on with this right now. We're going.
That's interesting.
So what has been, so the car accident was, that's an amazing story of seeing that and witnessing that. Seeing the woman unwind from the car accident.
Yeah.
And having her actually on the floor and doing that unwinding.
Yeah, that was probably my most profound when it comes to unwinding or theatricals, you know.
Yeah.
And absolutely.
Did you feel nervous about that session at all, or had you seen that
I
before?
worked on her regularly.
Okay, yeah.
And so the first time as she was doing, I knew what was happening.
Right.
And I'll have some of that, but not to that extent. So as she's unwinding, I'm realizing, you know, I'm having a hard time keeping her on the table. Right. So let's move it onto the floor so neither one of us are worried about that. Because if you need to unwind and you're like this and you are afraid you're going to fall, it kind of pulls you out of that.
Totally. And when you're unwinding, there still is it's absolutely something you can choose to do, allow your body to do, or you can choose to pull yourself out of it at any moment.
Well, and most people are kind of in a semi-meditative state. You're kind of there, and it feels good. It's like, let me get this stuff out of here. And sometimes you might go back into the memory of the trauma for a moment, and it helps. Then you might have some pain or some tears or but you can stop at any time. Yes, you're in charge. It's not like it's I mean, even if anybody goes and does hypnosis, that's the first thing a good hypnotherapist is explaining to you. I'm not doing this to you.
This is absolutely something you're choosing.
You're choosing. It's a journey you can pull out of it anytime you want.
You're not going to do anything that you're not okay with.
Yeah, and same with the craniosacral. It's like, no, you're in charge, big time. The therapist is there to help, support, and maybe guide a little, especially using that cranial rhythm is to, okay, whoa, let's go back to this position. Something was, you know.
Do you find that most of your clients, when you're working on them and they start going into that unwinding, when that does happen, do you find that they move into it with ease and comfort, or do you find that they second guess themselves?
Oh, a second guess. The ego will kick in.
Yeah, and then what do you say to them to help them go ahead and relax into that?
I just teach them and explain them and explain about unwinding, and that a lot of times the body needs to get in certain positions and we don't know what that is. But the body knows, that inner wisdom knows. And so usually I'll just tell them, okay, what you need to do is be like limp spaghetti noodles. And my job is to help your body move, and your body's going to lead, I'll follow, but you get to be in charge if we go somewhere you don't like, or if it hurt, there should be no pain, you know, you be in charge.
Yeah, you're a master facilitator. I love that. And other things that I've witnessed you do in sessions is help people process things through, you talked about the visualizations, maybe giving it a name, giving it a shape, giving that feeling of color, finding out what it wants from you and asking your inner wisdom. Are all of those things from craniosacral inherently?
No, they're
blend, right?
I'm not good at the names. Carl Jung, do you know how you say Jung?
Like the psychologist? Yeah. J-U-N-G.
J-U-N-G?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm trying to think of the other one. When we take the courses, then they give a lot of credit to these guys that have done that. Yeah. There's kind of a recipe that they found works really well, and it's pulled from these different psychologists and stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's not like craniosacral owns it.
Right.
But it's an amazing tool because you add that cranial rhythm to it.
Right.
And you've got
Carl Jung was an amazing psychologist too.
So, it's like that's not my strong suit. You know, to know. I'm like, okay.
But the practice of it is your strong suit. And it's amazing. And Carl Jung studied a lot in Eastern psychology.
Okay.
And so that really influenced him and softened a lot of the things that he had learned from working with Freud. Because Freud, you know,
we all know about
Freud,
right?
Yeah.
And then, where he took it and made it more balanced, more real.
Balanced and more, it depends on what you think, because these are like obviously judgment words, but he definitely softened the approach, and he definitely made an approach that was, for me, a lot more appealing, you know, a lot more beautiful view of the way the human mind and the way the human spirit works.
Yeah.
So
that would make sense. And that's where I think, it's not like a cranial. And I tell people all the time, like, how many modalities are out there? I mean, there's hundreds, thousands, whatever the number is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nobody owns any of it.
Right.
You know, the very first time when I went to my first craniosacral seminar back in 1998, and I had experienced nothing. I had one session on someone's table back a year earlier, not knowing this would become my journey.
Yeah.
And so they, at a seminar, classic seminar, they'd give you a little book learning, a little talk, you know, and then, okay, grab a partner, we're going to partner up and you're going to do this, this, and this. So the very first thing was laying our hands on each other's feet, one at a time, to feel this rhythm, to work our way and through the body to feel this, palpate and feel this rhythm. The very first thing that happened for me was this feeling of, oh, it feels like the ocean. Deep sea fishing with my dad when it's quiet and there's this rise and the fall. You can hear the lapping of the waves on the boat and the swell and this calm. And it was so peaceful. And then, I don't know how to describe this. I've had this happen a couple times in my life. But I got sucked into the universe. And there was this knowing, I've always known this rhythm. And I went, it's the rhythm of the universe.
Right.
There was this knowing that of foreverness. And it was like, whoa, what is this?
Right.
And I think I was hooked from then on. And so to lay my hands on someone's feet, typically people think craniosacral, it's the head. And I'm like, no, the rhythm comes from the head, but we work the whole body.
And you integrate through the whole body. So you start feeling like you're not just right here. You feel integrated through your body. You feel like your toes are as much a part of you as your eyeballs. You know?
And they are.
And they are.
And
Yeah.
so on an adult, typically, not always, but typically we start at the feet. And I tell people I'm at the edge of your pond, riding your waves to see where to go. And so, but as you do this, then when you find, wow, this person has like hardly any rhythm at all. What's your stress level, scale of 1 to 10? Oh, it's about a 15. And I'm like, yeah, your rhythm is showing me this. Or also, I've learned over the years.
What does that rhythm feel like? So what is it? I mean, can you articulate
Well,
it?
and I do. I will tell clients. I'll
ahead.
say, okay, as the head expands and contracts at the feet, what it feels like, ideal, if there is such a thing, would be literally it feels like it rolls out, and then it comes in, and then goes in, and then rolls out. They actually monitored movement in the femur. It's like the proof of it, like we talked earlier, So when there's this going on instead, or there's one side moves and the other one doesn't, or there's these different variations that you see that are classic patterns. But I start, and I'll tell people, okay, this is, and then you feel the rhythm, on their thighs and their hips and their shoulders. You can kind of feel going, oh, okay, this left side is off.
Right.
They're not matching, and the left side's really weak until I get to their hips. Something's going on in the legs.
Right.
And so you use this rhythm to find, okay, what's going on? And then I dialogue with the clients. I'm not into mystery. I'm into, okay, this is what I'm seeing.
You actually literally, like what you just did is what you do in a session where you're like, okay, this is what I'm feeling,
And then let's talk about it.
Talk about it.
And sometimes they have no idea. So I might give them clues. Okay, well, over the years I found this, this, or this. And then they'll go, that one fits. And I'm like, okay. And then sometimes people are so weirded out because I might say, well, personality-wise, this I've noticed typically means this or this. And they're like, you can tell that from touching my feet?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah, you can. You can. It's through your whole body. It's through your whole being. It's right here in the energy of everything.
Yeah,
you can totally
it's like
tell it.
Our personalities run through, and then traumas will run through. It's like, oh, this shows me you probably have a lot of pain over here in this hip or low back. And they're like, yeah, it's like the fascia's tight. The rhythm doesn't move normal. And then I go chicken or egg, which one came first? Is the rhythm off because of the emotional part, or is it the physical part that causes the emotional part? You just, so.
That's fascinating. So before we end our interview, I wanted to talk to you about generational stuff because it's an interesting concept, and I think it's actually a very practical concept. In our modern medicine, we have a recognition of genetic predispositions, and we have a recognition of things being inherited through families medically, and to some extent psychologically, if you had what we call mental illness being passed through families. But you see generational stuff in people. And before we started here, you were talking to me about some healing that can be done with ancestors. And that is in traditions all around the world. The idea that we do work here on this plane, not just for ourselves and healing ourselves, but for healing the wounds and the psychology and many of the spiritual issues and maybe even physical issues of generations from the past and generations going forward. And so you were talking to me a little bit about spirits and about this idea of connectedness, and I've experienced it in sessions where I've had healing work that I've done for myself and felt the presence of my ancestors. Talk to me a little bit about that, and if you are willing to, maybe you could even share an experience if you felt comfortable doing that, an experience that you've had with it.
Okay. Yeah. I don't advertise. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean, like,
that's like a big word. You can't be like, bring up my ancestors.
Well, I don't.
It will naturally occur
if it's
or
meant
if it's
to
meant to be, or it.
Because I kind of said, direction. I don't know how to turn it on or off, because it just happens. But over the years, it just occasionally happens where somebody on the table has someone that, like, what'll happen is usually lungs and heart are the areas that people will hold their grief and their sorrow and whatnot. And a lot of times I'll be like, ooh, what's going on here? Because the rhythm isn't the same. Yeah. So when someone is grieving or puzzled, or they have unfinished business or whatever, then occasionally the room fills up. I've had the room fill with people. I've had the room.
You just feel it. It just boom happens. I felt it too. It's cool, and it's verified. Like everyone in the room is like, yes, this is happening.
Can feel it. And I don't. My experience is that if I'm guessing what happens is when you're in the next plane, it's a higher vibration that we don't see real well on this plane. And so what happens is if someone comes through, it's like they'll go from a feeling that they're in the room, and it's almost like the matter gathers, and sometimes it will become dense enough that I'll see color of hair, I'll see, a lot of times they'll wear things for me to tell my client, and it validates.
Like an identifier.
Exactly, an identifier. It's like, like one time I'm like, she's telling me that her hair's dyed. It's a dyed color, which, like, do you dye your hair in the next life? So my logic has to be out of the room. I mean, come to find out that was a thing. But
your judgments of exactly how things play out. Yeah,
I have to, and I still.
Wait, you guys aren't allowed hair dye in the next world.
Yeah, you can't dye hair in the next world. But she was showing me, because this was a thing between the two of them.
Yeah.
So it was a validator. It was like, so. One of the cool things that happened, it's been, I don't know, 5 to 8 years ago. I don't know when it was. My dad passed away when I was 26. And he has come to me multiple times. Yeah, I was young. Yeah. And he's come to me many times. So this one time, we had about 2 weeks where I had like 3 clients that spirits would come through and everything. And I see my dad off in the distance, and I'm thinking, what are you doing here? This is about them and their dad. This isn't about us. And I'm kind of puzzled.
But we're also connected.
I know. But I was like puzzled, okay. And I just kind of thought, and then the third time he shows me, he's holding a door open and the word gatekeeper. And I went, oh, if they want to get through to their son or whatever's going on, he's
I get chills.
I know.
You work with your dad.
You
guys work together.
My dad's my gatekeeper. And that was like literally.
Oh, Nancy, that's so beautiful.
It was amazing. And so then a few months ago, I had a client on
How cool to have a business with your dad.
I know. So I had a client on the table sobbing about her sister that had passed away. And there's nothing, and I'm like, okay. So I thought, oh, I'll ask Dad. It never occurred to me to do that.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, Dad, if she's going to come through, now would be a good time, And I see this girl running down the hall, coming through my dad's door, sliding in, like into home base. And all I can see is her feet and her legs. And so I'm cracking up.
That's
going,
a cute little spirit. That's amazing.
She was right. And I go, she slid in like into home base.
Yeah.
She played softball.
Oh, cute.
So I go, she has on jeans and tennies. And I mean, it was just like so her.
Yeah.
And it was so amazing.
Very cool. I love that. I went for a walk the other day, and we have a lot of people that are retired in our community. So on this little walk in the morning, I walked by all these people that were probably in, like, people that were anywhere from 70 to 90. There were so many people that were like retired and older. I was just walking past them.
Like, wow.
And it was a really interesting experience because I had this like sort of latent low-level fear. That I talked to my students about this the other day too, because I was talking to them about some Stoic traditions, and it, you know, there were some lessons in that. But so I have this like low-level fear that I've not brought up to the surface, you know, and it was all around death. You know, I would have a fear when I went out into a lake that maybe someone that was dead, it's completely irrational. I knew it was irrational, so I didn't bring it up. I just like had this freeze frame, you know, kind of like fear of someone would be dead and the dead body would come up and it would touch me, and then my brain would like shut off and I wouldn't be like, and then what? Because if I went, and then what, I'd have to be like, and then
It'd be like, yeah,
no, I'm fine, right?
Right.
I mean, like what? Like what
What's
happens
the
after
fear?
that? Like after that, we call the police and we report a dead body. And like there's actually very like rational things that really happen if you continue on.
And how many of those came from a movie, right?
Right.
And you're like,
but if I just stop at the moment of like, you know, and like freeze frame right there, then you don't actually get to heal from it, right? So you like don't bring it up. You don't bring those things to the surface. So anyway, so I and clearly it wanted to come to the surface, you know, like all my visuals were of this fear coming to the surface. So I go for this walk and I'm passing all these people that are quite a bit older. They're like the age of our ancestors when they died, you know, their ancestors were seeking wisdom from. And here they are right here. They just haven't crossed over to the other plane yet to get a little more enlightenment, but and to collaborate with us. But they probably have varied amounts of enlightenment and wisdom depending on how aware they've been in this life, you know. And I stop at this graveyard, and I've always had an aversion to graveyards, like a low-level aversion to graveyards, right? And so at the graveyard, I decided that I would go ahead and I would just sit down and I would enjoy being in the graveyard. And the visual that would freak me out in the graveyard was of a very realistic version, very realistic thing of like worms eating the bodies and of them, you know what I mean, being decomposing, and that was really going on underneath all the grass. It really is, you know. But I kept it this level where I would stop there and be afraid of it and not go there and not think of it, you know, not bring it up. And so anyway, so I'm sitting there and I'm allowing myself just to actually see it and allow myself to picture it as reality, you know, and to just have practice acceptance of it. And I just felt ready to deal with it. So I'm sitting there doing that. And I come to a place where like I feel pretty good, you know, and I'm able to just be like, okay, I feel peaceful, you know, and this is going on. This is reality.
How would you rather feel?
Yeah, this is reality. Yeah, like the Byron Katie stuff. And yeah, so and so then, you know, I just walk back home. You know, all these things are usually very anticlimactic. And so even the most you know, like extreme things in the end, they settle, don't they? So I go back home. 2 weeks later, my grandma passes away. And I was able to help her. I was able to help move her body, and I was able to be a part of these like final things with her. And all those things that would have been distractions for me were gone, you know? Wow. And I was able to actually do this last act of service, be totally present, feel just love for her, and not be distracted by these freeze frame moments of fear that I would have had I not processed that. So one thing that I think is really interesting with craniosacral therapy too, and other healing traditions, is actually really being able to accept and connect with the idea of death. When you're talking about your ancestors, typically if someone thought about their ancestor visiting them, if they were afraid of ghosts, they're not going to have peace about that. But every time that I've experienced that, every time you've experienced it with someone, this is an incredibly peaceful thing. And it is a connected thing. And
it resolves issues. The love, the amazing love. And I think that's why it doesn't always happen.
Right.
Because it depends on
not ready for it. They're like freeze framing like the...
Yeah, I don't want ghosts in the room.
Right,
you know.
Right. Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Oh, you asked me about situations. I had one just a week or two ago. Okay. It was amazing. This girl, both of us are just feeling this huge amount. This was a more dramatic session, right? As we were talking about. Yeah, and just oh my gosh, this energy that needed to come out of her. And all of a sudden, I become aware this room is full of women, and they're dressed in various eras of the clothing.
That's cool.
Yeah. And this one more matronly, gray-haired woman steps forward like she was kind of over the other ones, like, you know, taking care, like she was in charge.
She's a matron.
Yeah. And so she was letting me know and because I'm telling my client, oh my gosh, this is what I'm seeing. So she was letting us know that she was clearing it for all these generations, all these women in the room, as she got rid of all the hurt and anger and things that happened to women. She was doing this for her ancestors. And so then I was like,
I love her. That's
it was
beautiful.
amazing. And I'm like, how far back? And she said it was 7 generations back is what. So then when the client got done, and I'm asking, okay, so now what are you experiencing? She's like, I feel like I have this wound. Like we got rid of all of this, but now it's kind of a gaping wound. And this woman steps up, classic white nurse cap, the old-fashioned, and steps up, and I'm seeing frankincense and myrrh, and she's just putting like poultices and things on my client. I'm seeing these these different dimensions as she's just. And the client, I'm watching my client just melt and heal. And she's saying, oh, God, it feels so much better. It was incredible. I was like,
Poultices.
Poultices.
Are what my great-grandma, Amanda Barnes-Smith, used to heal her son's wounds. Poultices
It was amazing.
That's really beautiful. Really beautiful.
And to heal for all those generations as well as for her. And I've heard that concept, but to see it was like, whoa.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really
That's powerful.
neat. Really neat. So you both get to heal, you know, both sides of the veil, or whatever you want to call it, however you want to label it.
Yeah, because we really are connected. Our society, I love so much about our Western culture. It's beautiful, and there's so many things that we've learned from studying the objective experience, you know, and from the way that things have been framed with Descartes and Aristotle and that type of tradition. But this understanding of the subjective experience and the connectedness of things instead of the separation of things, it's so beautiful that that's really starting to be brought back in a much bigger way into our society.
And more accepted, and more desired. You know, as clients are like, I'm ready for this.
Yeah, you know? We want both sides of that.
Well, it's like both sides of the brain. You know, it's like, okay, let's bring this together. It's not so black and white.
Yeah. Integration, not separation.
And it's beautiful.
Yeah,
I love it.
Well, I love you.
Oh, Rebecca,
I love you.
And
I'm really glad we had a chance to talk today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This was awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For information on becoming a licensed massage therapist, visit zmc.edu. For information on continuing your education in massage therapy and bodywork, visit studyhealing.com. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe.